When you become more disciplined, everything else lines up. Discipline is the root of all good qualities. If you're immersed in the self-development space, discipline is a term you absolutely cannot avoid. It's the key ingredient in any sort of self-improvement endeavor and often the scapegoat for all your failed attempts. Traditional wisdom suggests that the more you tackle difficult tasks, the better your self-discipline becomes. But that's not really what happens in real life, though. Many people find that while starting something like going to the gym feels manageable in the beginning, it becomes increasingly challenging as time goes on. Most New Year's resolutions only last 2 weeks, but if discipline truly develops as you engage in these challenging activities, shouldn't day 14 feel easier than day 1? To address this question, let's take a step back and consider what discipline actually is and why we need it in the first place. A lot of times, our brains may not lead us towards the best actions because they're essentially ancient hardware. When deciding whether to engage in an activity, your brain assesses its importance through a formula that prioritizes dopamine release and its timing. Essentially, it favors activities that offer the most dopamine right now, such as playing video games. When considering other activities, like going to the gym, it compares them to the current top choice and gives you its conclusion through emotions, thoughts, and feelings. The purpose of self-discipline is to ignore the calculations provided by your brain, aka these emotions, thoughts, and feelings, and proceed with what you've set out to do regardless. What does this look like? It begins with your consciousness suggesting an alternative action to your current best activity. The brain then takes your suggestion and calculates its value using the dopamine reward formula. Based on its calculations, your brain will conclude that the current best action has a higher value, and it will signal this result through feelings of emotions, thoughts, and mental resistance. This is where self-discipline steps in. Your conscious mind will say, "Okay, I don't care about these f***ed-up calculations, I am doing this anyway." From here, your brain will continue to bombard you with emotions until it sees you, the conscious mind, make the decision to go against its conclusion. And that's the entire self-discipline process. Wait a minute. The most important observation from this is that contrary to what many people believe, using discipline actually requires being unreasonable. Because yielding to instant gratification is actually your brain's carefully calculated logical conclusion on what you should be doing right now to maximize survival chances, using a time-tested formula passed down from your ancestors. While having discipline is basically saying no to all of that. What does this mean? It means that doing hard things by itself does not help you gain discipline. When you first start your New Year's resolution, it feels easy because you probably have goals associated with the activity that you are undertaking. Your brain takes all of these reasons into account when calculating its value. This is your motivation. However, since your brain won't see the benefits of your efforts for a long time, it gradually diminishes its estimation for your desired activity with each passing day of no visible progress. Throughout this entire process, you are still ultimately relying on your brain's calculation when performing your productive activity. Therefore, the amount of discipline that you actually build is very little. When we say we want to become more disciplined, we need to practice the actual self-discipline process, which is to defy your brain's calculation when it is presented to you. Let's say you usually take the bus to school every day, but if you walk really fast, you could arrive at around the same time. To turn this into a discipline training session, you could decide to walk to school instead of taking the bus. Before making this decision, you'll likely feel mental resistance and hear all the rationalizations from your brain as it calculates the value. That's when you need to switch off your logical side and say, "Yep, but I'm walking anyway." By doing so, you've completed 1 rep for your self-discipline training. This doesn't mean you will do this every single day. In fact, it doesn't really matter what activity you are training your discipline with, as long as it asserts dominance over your brain and the activity doesn't actually harm you mentally, physically, or socially. Anything is fair game. If you are starting out, I suggest you do 2 of these reps a day, and you can gradually increase the frequency as you become more and more comfortable going against your brain. Some of you might be wondering, why do I need to go out of my way and do something like this? Why can't I just make my New Year's resolution or whatever habit I'm struggling with my discipline training activity? The short answer is that you can, but I would advise against it. This is because the use of discipline does not always align with the goal of your productive activities. Ignoring emotions disrupts the habit-building process because you are removing all of these necessary ingredients in the habit loop. This brings me to the final point I want to address. What you often hear online is that discipline is the only thing you should rely on when it comes to personal development. But I would argue otherwise. There is no doubt that a disciplined person has an enormous advantage over someone who lives life solely on feelings, and we should all employ daily discipline training to gain control over our minds. But in my opinion, discipline is the nuclear option, your last resort, something to use only when all else has failed and you know peace isn't an option. Because if you've ever used discipline to accomplish something, you know it feels pretty f***ed up when making that initial decision. Simply because as humans, we're not wired to go against our brains 24/7. If you're someone who embraces pain and suffering, no problem. Hats off to you and have a good day. But for most people, we should seek ways to lower the discipline gap between good and bad activities through means like habit building, which is what this channel will try and explore with more videos like this. That said, keep up with your discipline training so that you have it at your disposal when your brain is like, shut